How's everybody doing today? Welcome to my Sunday live stream where we talk about photography, catch up as a community, and see how everybody's doing. I'm doing well, thanks. And gosh, I've been so busy. The holidays tend to do that, I guess, between family things going on and family and friends, the photo club that I go to, and also a few events and photography jobs I've been doing. Uh, Yeah, every year I only do 2, 3 events a year, and it's always around the holidays. I did one last night, and it's tough when you don't do it all the time, right? Like if I went and did some architectural stuff, no problem. I can go in there, sight unseen, pretty much assess everything, room to room, building to building, and I'm good. But event photography, it's just when you only do it a few times a year, it's really awkward. And I made some mistakes. For the most part, everything came out okay, but it was tough. And this was an event I haven't done before, a kind of event where it was so crowded, hundreds of people. And yeah, it was it was hard. I think if I did it one more time, like if I had one more night, I would have got it perfect. But uh, I was struggling with uh, capturing people, like, when everybody's smiling or getting I took so many pictures where people's eyes were closed or not smiling or both. It was just, it was terrible. So I ended up taking about 600 shots altogether, and, maybe 100 or so might be deliverable. There's probably 20 or 30 shots where the flash, didn't recycle or misfired, whatever reason. But I was pretty happy with the performance of the setup. I used the OM1 with the Godox X3 trigger and Godox 8200s and a Lux Master, which is the thumbnail on this particular stream is a picture of me at the event last night. Um, but I think they came out okay. So I'll show you a couple images from that. And also, I wanted to talk about maybe the 75 to 300 kit lens because it's $349. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I paid $400 for it used. So it's really it's really a bargain right now, and it's such a good lens. But there's a few caveats to it, so we'll go through that a little bit. And also, I'm going to leave the stream open to Q&A as always, really. But I just wanted to mention that in the beginning that if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat section, and I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't answer it, feel free to ask it again. I probably missed it. It's very easy for me to miss a question with so many messages going through, and because I want the streams, I want you guys to drive the conversation primarily. Because if I sit here and talk for 2 hours, you know, I don't know how helpful it really is. I just like to talk about what I did this week that might be photography related, some of the challenges I run into, and hopefully how I overcame them. So we'll leave that, and uh, I guess also, I guess this week and next week, there's a lot of sales going on, probably for the next several weeks, and then after the new year, all the clearance sales. So there's a lot of things going on there. So I may do a few more live streams than usual related to that. So I definitely do them on Tuesdays, the gas buying deals live stream. And I have links below in this live stream to my daily picks and also a link to the 75 to 300. Uh, I really feel like no matter what telephoto zoom lens you have now, you have to have this one. I don't care if you have the 150 to 400, the 300 f4, the 100 to 400. No matter what other lens you have, this is a lens you should always have, especially at this price point because it's so small and compact. Uh, and it takes great images. The only caveat to that is you really need to be in good light. And I'll show you some differences when I took it out once on a cloudy day and then once again on a sunny day. And the difference is literally night and day, the quality of the images, because it's not super slow. I mean, it's not fast. It's like an f4 something to f6.3, I think, on the long end, which isn't too bad. But given it's a entry level lens, uh, it's not super sharp, right? So you really have to give it light to kind of overcome some of the softness that the lens has, and then you'll really get amazing images from it, as you'll see. So just be in good light, sunny days. If it's morning and cloudy, yeah, it's rough. It's a little rough. I'd still eke out a few decent images, but when you're when you're not having enough light and you have to crank up your ISOs to, ridiculous heights, that combination of low light and high ISO, if you're in good light and high ISO, it's okay. You can get away with that, but low light and high ISO, that's gonna make that lens really struggle, whereas something like my 300 f4, which with the teleconverter I use, it's a f5.6. It's not that far off from 6.3, but even in low light and high ISO, I managed to squeeze out pretty sharp images from that lens. Uh, but in good light, it's really hard to tell the difference between the two lenses unless you really pixel peep. The other big difference, a lot of people wonder, you know, all things being equal optically, let's say both the lenses were equally sharp, okay? Um, and the other thing is the focusing speed. It's not as fast, the 75 to 300. And just relative to, say, going from point A to point B and acquiring autofocus and all of these things, it's, as expected, right? Uh, Entry-level lenses like this or kit lenses, they're not going to perform like a pro lens in ever, basically. But for what it is and for the price point, it's a steal. It's such a good deal. So I have one. It was my first telephoto lens, and I still take it out and enjoy using it because it's so small and compact relative to my 300 f4, which I know will get me better results, but sometimes you just don't want to lug around a big lens, you know? And then there's people that, a lot of you have the 150 to 600, the big giant telephoto that recently came out. And sometimes you don't want to take that out, right? Excuse me. But anyhow, excuse me, boy, I need a fast cough button here somewhere. So let me check the chat real quick, see who's come in. And I see Steve is here. It says, "Hi, Rob. I got some good Black Friday deals. The 40 to 150 2.8 Pro 300 off, and also the 21.4 Pro for 200 off, plus some filters." That's awesome. This is the time to get stuff for yourself. I have not seen these kind of deals really ever on OM System gear. This is the best I've seen. And Dudley says, "Recently joined. Thanks for your generosity and time and talent." Oh, thank you, Dudley. I'm happy to help. And that's my main goal, is to help you guys the best I can, to take better photos, right? Mainly to learn to use your gear. Uh, don't ask me about photography advice like, composition, all of these things. I do the best I can, feel free to ask, but take it with a grain of salt. My photography in of itself is, I would say, kind of mediocre, right? I don't really have a style or, you know, a good eye for a lot of things. I try, but I'm a long way off from being anywhere where somebody could look at my photo and say, "Yeah, that's something Rob would do." It's just not there. And Thomas is here from Atlanta, 10 Celsius. That's not bad. I don't know what it is here. because you're talking Celsius. What is that? That's 50 degrees. That's not bad. It's about the same here, maybe a little bit warmer. It's about the same temperature as my house, except for this office where I turn the space heater on. Okay, then Marco's here. Good to see you, Marco. And we definitely need to do a stream together on some laptops because the deals are here, and it's a good time to uh, kind of refresh our uh, stream and technology that's come out since we last did one together. And Systemus says, excellent series of birds photos you posted on this. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And Paul is, question, what is one single Black Friday thing I should get? Well, if you don't have the 75 to 300, um, wow, there's so many things. I would say, and honestly, okay, let's talk about Black Friday in general. There are some deals that, yeah, we will never see again, probably until next Black Friday. And that would be a lot of the OM system gear right now and a few other accessories. But what I'm finding is, since I dedicated part of my channel to shopping for deals, what I've been finding is that these deals come on and off all year long, sometimes better than what you get on Black Friday. And I also found that a lot of times they raise the price and then discount it. So it looks like you're getting a really big percentage off, but you're really not. And then other deals, they're not advertised as Black Friday or sale or discounted. They just lowered the price down to the lowest price I ever seen, and it just shows as the regular retail price. I'm looking at a light stand now that was selling for, I think, $40, $50. Then they discounted it, and I was tempted at the discount because it got down to like 30 something. And I'm looking at it today, it's $21 regular price. So yeah, that's definitely going in my cart today. $21 for this light stand. It's a really nice little light stand. And it's definitely worth because most $20 light stands, they're the kind of junk that they give you for free when you buy those light stand kits. And they're fine if you're just starting out, but when I go out in the field, I really need something a little more durable because I'm taking my lighting and gear with me more often when I go out. And these $10, $20 light stands are not cutting it. They're kind of flimsy and they're not going to last. They're holding up, but they're not going to last with that kind of usage. They're going to be fine here in my studio where I don't move them around much, but not in the field. So the one thing everybody should get if you don't have this lens is a 75 to 300. Either that or a really good tripod or a really good backpack. Or, I mean, it depends what kind of photographer you are, right? Lighting is always a good deal. There's always something to get, but I would narrow it down to that lens if you don't have it. If you're a Micro Four Thirds shooter, right? If you're not a Micro Four Thirds shooter, then tripods, bags, backpacks, these kind of things, filters like ND filters and polarizers. These are the things you should look for deals on. And other little accessories like picture frames, the digital picture frames, there's usually some good deals there. Things like that. And I'll go hardcore on that on my shopping live stream that like I said, I normally do on Tuesdays, and I may do more. Right now, another good deal is the DxO PhotoLab 8 is like 50 bucks off for a full license, and upgrades are like $89 right now. If you have PhotoLab 6 or 7, you can upgrade to 8. And that's really a whole different conversation, whether you should upgrade or not. I think if you have PhotoLab 6, you should upgrade. If you have PhotoLab 7, you really only need to upgrade if you're a heavy user of DxO. like you're using it day in and day out for all of your photos, then there's some performance improvements, like it'll render your images faster. Uh, excuse me. And there's some workflow improvements, but and there's a tiny bit of improvement in the noise reduction algorithm. But you might want to wait till PhotoLab 9 if you have PhotoLab 7 and you just occasionally use it, right? You don't go out every weekend and do photo shoots. You just go out, whenever you can, right? And any suggestions on an SD card reader? Absolutely. There's two kinds, okay? There is the standard SD card UHS-1 card reader, and then there's the UHS-2 card reader. And you can get both of these for $10 or $15 right now. So there's a link to my deals page where I have them both on here. It's just robtrek.com/deals. But let's go down. Wow, it's way down. Okay, this one. This is a good deal. $16. Ugreen is a very, very good brand. This will read both UHS-1, of course, and UHS-2, and it has the micro SD card reader as well. So when you plug this into your computer, you'll see two additional drives. So you can actually plug in the micro SD and the full SD card at the same time and read them both if you have both. And a lot of people are buying that DJI Osmo Pocket 3 and other action cams, which all use those micro SD cards. And it's more reliable to plug it in directly rather than use the card reader adapter that comes with it. So I highly recommend this one. One other one you might want to consider is, I passed by it somehow, but it's up here. This one. This one is $10. Uh, I've seen this for like like $9 the other day, but now it's $10. But $9, $10, whatever. It's not going to kill you for a dollar. This one does not read UHS-2 cards, but it does give you the flexibility to read older memory cards like these compact flashes and these old memory stick duos from Sony. So I would, and this has a standard USB-A port, right, instead of the USB-C. This is also made by Ugreen. Excuse me. Uh, so this I can recommend as well. So either way, this will also read the UHS-2 cards, but it's not going to read it as fast as a dedicated UHS-2 card reader. So these are the two that I would recommend if you're on a budget. The only other one that you might want to consider, I don't think I have it on my deal page because it's not on sale last time I checked, but it's the ProGrade reader. Is this one here? Oh, it is on sale. Okay, good. This one is more of a future-proofing type thing. I'm going to add this to my deal page. Yeah, I think I paid $73. I got like 10% off one time, but now it's 15% off, so it's even better. This rarely goes on sale, this particular reader. I like this reader because it it also reads the CF Express Type A, which is something that wait. Don't get this one. This is the CF Express Type A is for the Sony. Sony's the most common type reader, and let me see if it reads. Yeah, the Sony cameras use the CF Express Type A. That's why this one's on sale. The other one is not. if you don't have a Sony, this is, uh, let's see, this is the one you want. This one here, the CF Express Type B is more common in most cameras than the CF Express Type A. So, but this will future-proof you a little bit. If your next camera a couple of years from now has CF Express Type B, then you'll be okay. But I probably wouldn't buy this unless you already have a camera that uses CF Express B, because the other card readers are $10 or $15, right? So something like this, $16. You can always buy a CF Express Type B reader later, right, if you need one, because this wasn't that expensive. Okay, so go to my deals page for those deals so I can get a couple bucks. I guess I should, since we're talking about buying stuff, I am an affiliate for Amazon and I'll earn a commission on any qualified sales. So, and your purchases support the effort, that I make here to help photographers, of course, right? And every little bit helps. Um, and let's see. Good morning, Gordon. Good to see you. Getting lots of snow in the mountains. Wow, that's beautiful. Nothing like a snowy mountain, right, for a photograph. And Palumbo's here. Good morning. Good to see you. And Paul says, my first telephoto was the 100 to 300 Lumix f4 to 5.6. Yeah, that's a very good lens. And it's a little faster at 5.6. I would say definitely if you have Panasonic camera, that's the way to go. But it's quite a bit more expensive right now. It's at least $100 more. And so between the two, I would get the Olympus one. And yeah, so the 40 to 150 kit lens is $129, even on Amazon, right now. So because OM System sells on Amazon, of course they do. Uh, this is an excellent lens. This lens is a little bit tougher call to recommend versus the other two versions, right? They have a 40 to 150 f4 Pro and they have a 40 to 150 f2.8 Pro. I just got the kit lens that you see here because I don't really need weather sealing. And it's very, very sharp lens, very good lens for most things, right? It doesn't have quite the reach to do birding and things, but for doing, like, I've done events using this lens, no problem. It's more than sharp enough for taking pictures of people, doing portraits, uh, and other short telephoto work type things, right? More than sharp enough. But if you need weather sealing, the 40 to 150 f4 Pro lens, very compact, very, very sharp, pro level quality, of course, right? Hence the name, Pro lens. Weather sealing. It's on sale for like $5.99 right now. I think it's sold out on Amazon right now. It's such a good deal because it's normally $8.99, so it's like 300 bucks off. If you need weather sealing, get that lens. Now, if you need the extra stop of light, the f2.8 weather sealing, that's you need to get the f2.8, and that's not a lens I recommend too often, except for the fact that you can use teleconverters on the 2.8 lens. So you can add the 1.4 teleconverter. That'll make it an f5 point. I'm sorry, that'll make it an f4 lens up to what's 4 times 150. It adds another. I can't do it in my head anymore. 150 times 1.4. So that makes it a 210 millimeter f4. And you'll still get excellent, excellent results. A lot of people are fine with the 2x teleconverter, which make it a 300 millimeter f5.6. And that's still really good. So the 2.8 lens, weather sealing, tack sharp, fast autofocus, and the flexibility to use the teleconverters. A lot of people like that option, but then there's a big step up on price, but it's also on sale. I think for 10.99 or 11.99, it's also a really good deal right now. Uh, so if you want that flexibility to get the telephoto capability, like a 300f 5.6, and still get really good results. It's not as good as a dedicated 300 millimeter, right? A prime, but it's still very good results. So you have to, when it comes to this particular focal range, these three lenses, you have to tailor your decision to what you think you're going to need, right? If all you want is a short telephoto and you don't need weather sealing, nothing beats this 40 to 150 kit lens. It is really sharp, super small and lightweight, and relatively fast between f4 and f5.6. And like I said, I've used it at events, no problem. Um, in fact, I may still have the pictures up, like this one. This is the 40 to 150 kit lens at one of the events I did, and this was ISO 800. Oh crap, that's a total lie. That's the 75. This is the 40 to 150 kit lens at ISO 500 at 4 1/125th of a second. Just to give you an idea of the ambient lighting. Stage lighting is usually really good, uh, at the larger venues. But what was I at? I was at 40 millimeters here, so I was pretty close. But you know, you really can't ask for more than that from a kit lens, right? Uh, what's this one? This was the 75 1.8, also a very good lens. Okay, so that's the only example I have right here. Let's see, what's another? Yeah, I don't have any other examples handy here with that lens. Okay, but yeah, that lens is good, and I don't own the other two because I'm very content with the 40 to 150 kit lens. Uh, I paid, well, I bought it with my EM10 Mark II 7 or 8 years ago, however long ago that was, and it's still working great for me. Even though it's all plastic, plastic mount, plastic barrel, everything, still very holding up. And Plato, wow, 18 degrees. The wind though is rough, right? I don't like wind. I can handle just about any temperature, but if it's windy out, man, it better be like, 70 or 80 degrees out at least. I guess 18 Celsius is close to that, but that ain't gonna cut it for me. And Paul says 95. Wow. Wow. I don't mind it if it's dry. If it's humid out, that's a little harder to deal with, but I'm happy still. I hate the winter time. I hate it. I mean, when it gets below 70 degrees, I'm like wearing my coat already. And then when we get into this, 50s and 60s, it's cold. I don't like it. And God forbid, I got to go out all winter when it's in the 20s and 30s. I don't like it. I do it, but I don't like it. And Hiker Dude says, "Hi Rob, great channel. Just bought the OM1 with extra battery for 1200 on sale. Nice. Are there any third-party battery grips for this camera? The OEM version is quite expensive here." There is not. I could not find any. I bought one during the Prime Day deals in October. I paid $250. So unfortunately, I don't think there's just no deals on that. And I was going to use it last night uh, for for the event because it is a lot easier to do portrait style photos. But I ended up not doing it. I should have though. I should have brought it because I did do I did wanna do quite a few vertical photos, and it was just a little bit awkward with the OM1 without it. That on top of you get the extended battery life because you get 2 batteries instead of 1 on your camera. And so one goes in the grip, one goes in the camera itself. So I like that it doesn't take away the battery in the camera. You can use both. And the controls are very good. It's a very high quality, but yeah, I haven't found any third-party ones yet. It'd be nice because you can buy third parties for other cameras for less than $100. Uh, but of course, the OM System original one is going to have all of the controls you need and 100% compatibility and weather sealing, right? But yeah, you got a tremendous deal. It's killing me that I paid full pop. I paid full price for my OM1 when it was released, and I got the the extended 5-year warranty for free, and I got a battery for free. So I got some discount on it, right? Nothing like what it's selling for now. I mean, I'm tempted to get another one. I'm so tempted to buy another one right now. But then the OM1 Mark II is on sale for 18.99. So I'm thinking, for 800 more, I could just get the Mark II. But then I don't really need a second OM1. Certainly, I don't need an OM1 Mark II because the performance on my OM1 is pretty awesome as it is. I mean, yeah, if they can improve the autofocus, we'll all welcome that, right? But the autofocus as it is now has been excellent for me. Yeah, I miss a few shots time to time, and it does struggle with when the birds are behind a branch. I don't know if it still does with the new firmware update they just did. I haven't updated the firmware yet. Because what I'm planning to do is to borrow uh, someone's OM1 that has updated the firmware and compare it side by side with mine, where I haven't updated the OM1, the firmware, and see if I can tell a difference, and then maybe do a short video on that. But yeah, I go out birding with it time to time, and the autofocus is more than adequate, especially if the new firmware is supposed to be even better. Gordon says, wanted to pick up an OM5 if there was a great Black Friday sale, but the same price as for the last several months, and now the OM1 is a great sale instead. Such a good deal, but really wanted an everyday camera. Yeah, the OM5 is significantly smaller. I mean, if you look at the dimensions, it doesn't look like it's way smaller, but in practice, in real life, it's a much smaller camera and really can be an everyday camera. Uh, but yeah, it's hard to justify the OM5 when you can get the OM1 for less money or within $100, give or take. It would drive me bonkers to buy an OM5 right now, knowing I could have just got another OM1 instead, which is by far a superior camera, technically speaking. And Robert's here. Good to see you, Robert. And Roman, good to see you. Gosh, Roman's been a viewer, as many of you, a long, long time. And System Mature says, if the Pro lenses are out of your budget, that 75 to 300 lens is excellent value for the money, very small and lightweight. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And there's some good deals on the SSD. Just bought a 2 terabyte scan disk to take me on. Cool. I got to look into that. I haven't I haven't gone into the computer side too much. I did find a good deal on a laptop for photographers, and I'm waiting to work with Marco on that. And David's here. Good to see David. David's back from a cruise trip. Hopefully you got the Aura or Northern Lights or whatever it was you were going to shoot. I know David bought an OM1, paid a little more, like $13.99, I think, a couple months ago, uh, just for that. um, so we do need to go out. I got a I got a project I have to finish by tomorrow. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go out, but then today and tomorrow, the weather's nice, right? We're gonna be close to 60 degrees, give or take. It's gonna be sunny, and then I think Wednesday or Thursday, it's gonna get down below freezing. Ugh, I don't like it, but I'll text you later after the stream or something, and if you have time today, let me know if you have time today to go out. Maybe we can go out just for a couple hours. And Alan, haven't been in for a while, but good to be back. Just have been photographing some paintings using my 12 to 100 and EM1 Mark III, which came out really well. Yeah, that 12 to 100 is awesome. I I got one on my shopping cart, or on my watch list, I should say. I could have used it last night, to be honest. What I did last night is I took my 35 to 100 f2.8 and, the Panasonic, and 12 to 40 f2.8. I used those two lenses, and that's more than enough for everything I needed to do. I used the 12 to 40 a little bit more because it was really crowded. So it was hard to get any room or distance and do portrait style stuff with the 35 to 100 because people just kept walking in front, you know. So many pictures of just somebody's head or arm in the picture. So I had to get close with the camera so people didn't walk in front of me because they would see me right there. But if I'm with a 35 to 100, I'm probably 10, 20 feet back. And then people don't see you taking a picture of somebody else and they just walk in front of you. How rude. Just kidding. But, you know, so that's the other thing I learned yesterday was at really busy events, the 35 to 100 is tough to use because you are kind of far away from people and other people are just going to walk in front of you because they don't know you're trying to get a shot of somebody across the room. Um, okay, so let me stop right here and talk about or show you a couple images from that 75 to 300. So this is from the cloudy day, okay? And you can see I'm at ISO 5000, and these are all processed with DxO, deep prime. So I've denoised and processed all of these. Uh, and I'm zoomed all the way to 300 millimeters, and it's cropped pretty heavily. What are the dimensions on this? This is cropped. Look at this dimensions here, 529 by 584. So what is that? That's 2 megapixels? I don't know. It's not much, right? This is cropped heavily. Uh, and I was still able to eke out some detail. But zooming in, you can see it's not tack sharp because there just aren't enough pixels on the subject, number one. Number two, I'm at ISO 5000, so I'm losing some detail, okay? Oh, I'm sorry. But when you look at this at like a normal distance, and if it's on Instagram, it looks like this, right? Because it's really tiny. Or on somebody's phone, it looks great for that. But when you're looking at it on your screen, you can definitely see the softness because of the lower light and the higher ISO. Okay, let's see what else I got. Here's another one. Uh, 1/500th of a second. Okay, so my shutter speed is too slow. I should have stayed at 1/1000th at least. But look at my ISO. I'm at 2500. I'm zoomed all the way to what 264 millimeters. I don't know why I'm at f6.7. I must have bumped the aperture dial. But this came out okay. And what are the dimensions? This is about the same size. Oh, wait, wait, wait. Wait, where are the dimensions? That's not the dimensions. That's the photo counter. That's the counter. It's 1 point. Okay, you can't. Okay, here are the dimensions. 2600 by 2000, so 5.4 megapixels. What was this one? This one was 1700, so 1800 by 1300. So this is a 2.41 megapixel image. And if you cropped in on the bird itself, it'd be less than 1 megapixel easily. This one is at 5 megapixels, 5.5 megapixels. Still not bad. There's still some detail. Just a tiny bit in the feathers. A lot of this is probably extrapolated through the algorithm that DxO uses. But I thought that came out okay. Here's another one. This one's at ISO 2000, 1/500th, and it was still able to extract some detail. This is ISO 8000, and I'm cropped into 1500 by 2000. So this is a 3 megapixel image. And yeah, it's kind of soft everywhere. So if I punch in, whoops, sorry. There's not a ton of detail there. There's certainly enough detail to make out the different feathers and patterns in the bird, but there's not very fine detail here, right? But still, it's not a bad image, right? Considering how much I had to crop in. I cropped in from a 20 megapixel image down to 3 megapixels. And the bird is still tiny in the frame. It's very, very tiny. Okay. This one here, ISO 2000. And, in case you can't read the EXIF data, 1/250th of a second. So I dropped my shutter speed way down because the bird is just sleeping, standing up. Now this one, I was able to get some decent detail, but this is a big bird, right? This is a Canadian geese, so it's pretty big. So the perception of detail is going to be higher because it's just a bigger bird. But this one is, and this one's not cropped too much. This is a 3x3, so this is a 10 megapixel image. So this bird was a little closer, and it's a bigger bird. And let's see, ISO 250, ISO. The lighting's okay, but it's a cloudy day, right? All right, let's see what else I got here. This was terrible. It's kind of a fun picture, but it's terrible because my shutter speed's 1/250th. I don't know what happened. I went from the Canadian geese to this bird, uh, and forgot to change my shutter speed. But this is a 2.39 megapixel image. This one is cropped in quite a bit down to 5 megapixels. And again, it's a cloudy day. I lowered my shutter speed down to keep the ISO low as possible. I probably could have went down to 1/250th of a second, but the problem is the lighting is not great. It's very soft. So when the lighting is soft and not harsh, like on a sunny day, you tend to lose detail as well because there's not as much contrast in the image, right? You're not getting that contrast in the feather detail. So that's the other thing with cloudy days. You lose detail just because of the lower contrast. And your perceived sharpness of your subjects are going to be less, right? Even though the settings on this are pretty respectable, 1/500 to ISO 1250, you would expect a better image, but because it's cloudy out, I'm not getting the fine contrast and detail that you would normally get if this were a sunny day. That said, this lens did a good job, but there's just a tiny bit of softness when you punch uh, in here. Just a tiny bit. Okay, let's see. This is another one, 1/250. Okay, so I lowered my shutter speed. I'm at ISO 2000. Just to give you an idea of the lighting, it's pretty weak. And this is a 3.51 megapixel image, so I cropped in quite a bit here as well. But the feather detail looks really good. But you can see there's a little bit of haloing here. Some of that is because I was doing some processing here, but That's sorry. This is still an excellent image considering the conditions and how much I had to crop in to this photo. Okay, let's go to, all right, there's a couple more here. There's this one. This one came out pretty good. 1/2000th of a second, ISO 4000. Uh, I dialed in -1 EV to try to retain some of the highlight detail, but this came out pretty good. And this is heavily cropped. This is a 1.3 megapixel image total. So, because the bird was pretty far off and I had to crop in quite a bit. But to get this, I got really good detail out of this because I was using a fast enough shutter speed. I'd have preferred 1/4000, but then my ISO would go up higher, so it's going to offset any detail I might capture with a faster shutter speed. But I thought this came out really much better than I expected it would. And then this is another image from that series because I was using, continuous shutter, like 50 frames per second. And okay, so this next image here, now this is the next day and the light was excellent. As you can see, 1/250 of the second, ISO 640. So I'm below 1000 ISO now. And now the colors, the details, everything has so much more pop and contrast. And this is a beautiful image. And I'm zoomed out to 300 millimeters, wide open. This image here, I mean, 1/1000th of a second, ISO 200 at f8. What was I? I was in shutter priority. Why the heck am I at? Okay. It had to raise the aperture to f8 because I hit ISO 200. But if I punch into this, and here are the dimensions, I was able to, this is a 4:3. This is a 12 megapixel image. Let me get this out of the way. But when I can get the bird close enough to the frame where I can fill the frame, so I filled over half the frame with this bird. And look at the detail in good lighting. So, in bright sun, I'm getting good contrast in the feather detail. I'm at base ISO 200. The only thing I should have done is I should have been at 1/2000th of a second. Uh, I probably would have squeezed a little more detail out because I'm a little bit low on the shutter speed. But this is a 200% crop. And I'm just getting amazing detail out of this lens. So I this is why I say no matter what lens, telephoto lens you have now, this is the lens to get if you want to do wildlife and birding. But you have to be in good light, as I'm demonstrating here, to get the best images out of it. And I would be hard pressed to tell if I'd used my 300 millimeter f4 or I used this lens on an image like this, because I was able to fill the frame with the bird and keep my ISO low in good light. The conditions were perfect, right? Um, Here's another one. 1/1000th f8, ISO 200. I guess the bird landed. But yeah, the 75 to 300, when you give it enough light and good light, and it's a nice sunny day, and you can fill the frame, because this one's a 6 megapixel image. So I did have to crop in quite a bit. So I'm going from 20 megapixels down to 6 megapixels because of the crop. But I'm still getting tremendous detail out of this shot. This bird was really far away. Look at this. This is less than 1 megapixel. This is a merganser duck or something. This bird was virtually a dot in my screen. I don't know why my settings. I'm in shutter priority. Oh, because the light was good. So I'm at 1/4000th of a second, so I'm getting a little bit of diffraction too because the aperture went up to f11, and also I dialed in -3 exposure comp because I wanted to preserve the highlight detail. Excuse me, because we have a lot of white feathers here, and even at -3, I was clipping some of the highlights in the bird, but I was trying. I probably could have used 1/8000th of a second and avoided the diffraction. That would have put me at f8, and I could have been -3, -4, and recovered all the highlights a little better. Let me see if there's anything else here. Nope. This is the 75 to 300. This is pretty much the whole frame, 15 megapixels. So I didn't have to crop too much. It was probably, I just straightened the image a little bit. But if we look at the where I focus, it looks like the focus point is here. I mean, it's just amazing the detail you can get out of this lens. And then this is my Pentax, and this is something. So I'll come back to these images from the event because I want to talk about these. These were pretty cool. Okay, let me go back to the chat and see how you guys are doing. See if I missed any questions. Cessna Chur says the TCs work very well on the 40 to 152.8. I have the 1.4 TC attached to mine nearly all the time. Works great for video. Awesome. Yeah, so like I said, the 40 to 150 Pro 2.8 has that flexibility of teleconverters, which a lot of people really enjoy because you can carry basically 3 lenses in about something this size, right? 3 different lenses with the teleconverters. And Peter has a weather sealing question. The grip on my M1 Mark II is separated by the shutter button. Will this impact the weather sealing? I super glued it back into place. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. Now, if there is a screw underneath that rubber grip, right? If there was a screw there, it could potentially impact it. Because the rubber, a lot of the screws on the camera are covered up by the rubber grip, and I would imagine that helps with the weather sealing, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. But I'm not an expert on that part of camera design, but I can't see how just the rubber grip peeling off, if there's no screws underneath it, that it would be affected. Sometimes the rubber grip and stuff is formed in a way to reduce the way the water ingresses or seeps into different parts of the camera, and that's part of the weather sealing. Because the camera has to have holes in it for like microphones and dials and all these things. And they designed the rubber sealing, which would include the grip, right? Uh, to keep the water from ingressing or seeping into these different parts of the camera. So I think if you didn't have any exposed screws and you glued it back on, you should be okay. No reliable news. I haven't heard anything about the Pen F2, and dry as a bone. Wow, that's awesome. 95 degrees and no humidity is fine by me. 3 degrees Celsius in Germany. Wow, that's cold. I mean, that's near freezing. I wouldn't want that. And MSeam says, Rob, have you tried Nikon ZF? And if so, what are your thoughts? Uh, I tried it. Not for more than a few minutes at a time, a couple of different times. And I was gassing for that camera when it came out because it's just beautiful camera, right? And the specs, as we all know, it has the new processor, the new autofocusing system, and it's only limited because it's still using, one of the older sensors. Uh, so there's some video limitations there, but for photography, you got nothing to worry about. You know, the dynamic range, the autofocus, everything is 100% there, right? If it's anything like my old D750 sensor, you know, you can pull 5 stops in the shadows with very, very little noise. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, I don't have much to say. I really like the build quality. I mean, it was, you know, supposedly it's all brass dials and stuff, and it felt really solid in my hands. And the fact that it, you know, a lot of people are complaining about the grip or lack thereof. That doesn't bother me so much because you can add a grip, and you know, if you hold your camera properly, right? Because any camera, let's take my Nikon. This is my DF. This is the precursor to the ZF, right? This doesn't have much of a grip either, right? Very, very minimal. More than the ZF, but uh yeah, it's a little bit too small even for this kit lens here. This is the 24 to 85. And this grip is not comfortable even with this little bitty lens. Uh but you know, you're supposed to hold the camera like this with your left hand. And your right hand is simply to guide the, you know, control the buttons and do all that stuff, right? But you know, there's so many people. Oh, this thing's been left on for a couple of weeks. Battery's still full. That's the great thing about DSLRs, right? But there, you know, there's the people that you see holding cameras like this with one hand, like a gangster, and you know, seriously, you're supposed to hold your camera like this and like this with your left hand and use this to focus, etc. I get it. You know, having a good grip on the camera, certainly with much longer lenses, makes a big difference in the handling overall. But a lens like the Nikon ZF, this is like your everyday camera. This is not a workhorse camera. This is not a workhorse camera. My DF, the ZF, the ZF is for going out and enjoying photography, right? It's like an enthusiast camera, hobbyist camera. It's not a pro camera. So people that are always trying to take pictures with one hand, that's not the way cameras are supposed to be held. They're supposed to be held like this. I know I'm being a bit preachy, but it drives me nuts when I see all these photographers on YouTube doing, you know, holding their camera out like this, trying to use the back LCDs. You know, it's like, what? No wonder, you know, well, anyway, no wonder so many people ask me, why are their pictures blurry? It's because you're not holding the camera properly, right? I mean, you have to develop. Well, anyway, it's got nothing to do with your question. Uh, I like it. I like the ZF. I would definitely get one. If I didn't have a DF already, I would have definitely bought the ZF, no question. Uh, so I like the camera a lot. I like the fact that it has this way of autofocusing wherever you are in the frame with manual lenses, if you want to adapt manual lenses. And you know, it has image stabilization built into the body, and it has dual card slots, right? Even though the one is just a micro SD, that's fine because for me, my workflow is I never take one of the cards out. Whenever I have two memory cards, like in my OM1, like my photo job last night, this is the card that I take out and read all the pictures off of, and I put it back in. But all the pictures are still on card slot number 2, even though I format this one. And I only format this card whenever I go out. I never format the second card until it becomes full. Once it gets full and I've offloaded all my pictures off of slot 1, then I'll format this. But this second card acts as a backup and always in the camera type memory, like in camera memory. And I never take out the second card. So even if I forget to put my card back in when I go out, because I've done that before, I'll always have this in here as my backup. So I never go out in the field anymore without a memory card. It just doesn't happen anymore. So for the Nikon ZF, I would put the micro SD card in there, the biggest one I could get, like a 512 gig micro SD, stick that in there, and then use the full-size SD card slot as my main memory card that I take in and out. But I would always set it up so it writes to both cards at the same time, and then I would only format the second card when it becomes full. And I've gotten all the pictures off and backed up and everything, you know. So yeah. Uh, so I think, and it's less than $2,000, right? This camera. I think it's a really good deal. I mean, if it gets down to like $1,000 on the used market one day, I might get one. I might get one. I really like that camera. But I just don't, like I said, if I didn't have my ZF, my DF here, I would probably get it. But I have this, so there's really, and this is such a fabulous camera. Takes amazing images, just like the ZF would. The ZF, because when I had my D750, I was really happy with the images from it as well. Okay, and Shri is here. Ah, you're going to update your software. Cool. Assume we're talking about the DxO. And Seraphin says he loves his ZF so much considering a second one. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with the ZF. And if grip bothers you, you can always get that extension. That helps a little bit, right? That external grip that they sell. And they go on sale time to time for like 20 bucks. They're not expensive. And I would get one just for the sake of having a full plate on the bottom of the camera at all times. Because I like to use tripods and monopods a lot. So I'd rather, all of my cameras, except for my ZF, I can't find a full plate for it, but I always get the full plates for all my cameras whenever I can. Okay. Especially my OM1, my Fuji, and my Sony all have full plates. My EM5 Mark III, full plate. EM10 Mark II, full plate, just like that on the bottom. And it protects the tripod mount, particularly on the plastic bodies, right? Like the EM5s and OM5s. It protects that plastic mount so that it doesn't break. Anyhow, okay. And Intrigue is here. How you doing, Eric? Good to see you. And David says you can borrow the OM1 anytime. Has the software upgrade. I might be talked into selling it to you. Wow. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. 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 Don't tempt me. Oh. And Western Digital and Seagate 20 terabyte for 269. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I forgot about the hard drives. Those things really go on a good deal. That's another one. That's another product that really is, Black Friday is the best time to get these kind of products. They do get pretty cheap other times of the year, but I found Black Friday seems to be the best time. And Amazon, they have the 7 artisan and TT artisan lenses all on discount. Wow. Okay, I'll have to look at those. They make great lenses for Sony and Fuji. So and Micro Four Thirds, but all of them are like manual focus, right? So if you want a native manual focus lens, the 7 artisan TT artisans are really good. It's better than buying a vintage lens in a lot of cases, right? Yeah, driving you bonkers too, right? Because we want the OM5. I would love an OM5, but I ain't paying same price I can get an OM1 for. Sorry to be slacking, Rob. The move and remodeling is taking up a ton of my spare time. It's okay. It's no big deal. We can do it anytime, you know? Do it next year if you want. Uh, I can wing it. Uh, let's see. Marsha, good morning to everyone. It's a crisp 69 here in Southeast Florida. Man, so jealous. If it wasn't for all the hurricanes, man, I would be there. I gotta give some serious thought to where I'm gonna live a few years from now. And any thoughts on L brackets for the Ohm one? Would like one that covers the entire base to increase the grip size, but also allow the battery access. Yeah, the only one available really is this RRS. I mean, it's expensive though. I think it's $100 just for the plate, and then it has this slide in bracket that slides in and out. Uh, so it runs closer to like $150. And you can only get them on like camera sites like B&H and let me find it here. Marco gave me one as a gift. I was so generous of him. Let me see if I can find it for you. $175. Wow. Okay, so this is the one. This is what I have. I have this one, just the base plate. But the L bracket, $75 more to add that. Wow. Let's see what else they got. Yeah, that is it. I think there's some other ones out there, but that's the one that I'm familiar with. Let me just take a quick look. Three-legged thing. This might work. This is a used one. This looks like it's a little bit shorter, so it doesn't block the battery door, and it has the L bracket, but that's for a used one. Leaf photo. Wow, there's a lot more options since I last looked at this. Leaf Photo is a really good brand. Leo Photo. And this looks like it doesn't block the battery door either. The only thing is it's not a full plate. But it's cheap, man. $36? That's pretty attractive. I'm just seeing. So it looks like these two, right? Uh, this is not an L bracket, but that's a good deal for a half cage. I would say if you don't need the full plate, this looks like a really good option. So maybe consider that to get started. The only problem with these half plates, let me show you, is you see this little screw right here? That's designed to keep your camera from sliding off of the Arca Swiss bracket. But I usually take those out because I don't like it stopping like that. But the main thing is when you lay the camera down on the table, uh, you know, you got this little screw hanging out. It doesn't sit flush or flat on the table, and it's just annoying to me. It doesn't. doesn't do anything really, affect the performance or anything of the camera. Maybe that extra safety is a good idea, but I like it when I set my camera down, it sets flush on the table. I can just set this right here, and it just sits there. It doesn't like fall down forward or tilt one way or the other. So I don't know, that half plate looks like a good deal. So what I'll do is I'm going to put my affiliate link in because that's actually not bad. Okay, so there's my affiliate link for eBay's. That looks like a really good deal. And I need to go up. Somehow my chat rolled up on me. Okay, how do you feel about the Sigma 1.4 primes? The 56 1.4 is catching my eye. I have the Oly 1.7 and 25 1.7. Okay. The 56 1.4 is amazing. I have that lens for my Fujifilm camera, and the sharpness and the autofocus area, the smoothness of the bokeh is amazing. And for the price point, I paid 350 bucks. I got some kind of deal on it. On a Micro Four Thirds, it's going to be really a short telephoto, close, what's that, 100 and some millimeters. So that's my only problem with it, is that it's a little bit tight. You need some distance to use that lens, but not as much as, say, the 75 1.8, which is also an excellent lens, but costs twice as much. So between the two, I would get the 56 1.4. Definitely, yeah, definitely. I could highly recommend it. I mean, based on the results that I got from my Fujifilm, that's an amazing lens. I don't have it for the Micro Four Thirds system, but let me see if I have. But I've seen a lot of images um, on like Micro Four Third cameras for the 56, and they're just amazing, amazing, just as good. So I only have two pictures uh, on my Flickr page, so I'll put a link to this if you want to check it out. But that's one. Why? Oh, I must have cropped this by accident, because this is. I sized this down to 2000 pixels. How about the next one? Okay, this one I didn't resize. So this is the full res. But what I want you to look at, ignore the colors. Fuji colors, I got it to where I can get the colors decent now, but this is early on. This was over a year ago. It's the last time I used this lens. It's not the lens, it's the camera. I don't really use my Fuji much. But just to give you an idea of the smoothness of the transition, so if this were a Micro Four Thirds camera, it would crop in about here, right? Like this. But and the reason this is comparable to Micro Four Thirds, because the pixel density is about the same on the Fujifilm as it is the Micro Four Thirds. So the only difference here is the field of view. The field of view is a little bit wider on the Fujifilm than it is on a Micro Four Thirds, but You can definitely compare resolution, bokeh, chromatic aberration, all the defects that a lens might have, or qualities that a lens has. It's going to be pretty much the same on my Fujifilm, which is the 40 megapixel XH2, as it would be on a Micro Four Thirds camera, because the pixel density is about the same. The only difference is really in the field of view. And I just think the bokeh is amazingly smooth and creamy. This transition is really good. So yeah, you're going to get amazing, amazing results. And you will get the same depth of field and everything. Just the field of view will be different, right? Okay. So yeah, that lens, highly recommended. And I haven't heard anybody say anything about uh, any problems with autofocusing or anything like that. I've never heard one bad thing about that lens, to be honest. So definitely get it. And but all of the Sigma 1.4 primes, they also have the 16, and what's the other one? Is that a 24 or is it a 35? I forget. The only problems I have with the other ones, the 56 is a nice compact lens, right? It's not very big. It's bigger than, say, the 25 1.4, but uh, I feel like the 16 is a little bit too big, the 16 1.4. And having that little bit of extra light is not that important on such a wide angle lens. I would I would recommend like the 15 millimeter 1.7 over the Sigma, the Panasonic 15 1.7 over the Sigma 16 1.4 because of the size. And I believe the 15 is actually going to be even a better quality. You're going to get nicer images from it. Um, and I think I can't remember the other focal length. But that one didn't impress me as much either for that particular focal length. I think there are better options on the Micro Four Thirds side. And Marsh said, I'm going to Huntley Meadows after disembarking from Auto Train at Christmas. Is it worth it? Yeah, absolutely. Definitely go to Huntley Meadows. The pictures I just showed with the birds and stuff, those were all Huntley Meadows. Um, that place is very reliable for birding. Or for really, you never know what you're going to get, but it's very reliable. I might plan a trip out to Bombay Hook too. So people that are in my photo club, keep track of that. Let's see. And Hater Bear is saying, I have the new Olympus 40 to 150R in which the retracting locking mechanism fell off. Don't mind that, but concerned that this might affect longer term durability. Um, I'm not sure what you mean by retracting lock mechanism. My 40 to 150 doesn't have any locking mechanism. It just opens and closes. But usually locking mechanisms, right? It's just a little plastic tab inside the lens. And if that breaks and it's not jiggling around and blocking any of the movement of the internal lenses, you're going to be fine. I wouldn't worry about it. It's just one little plastic pin that broke off, most likely. So I wouldn't worry about it. Do you normally expose to the right? I do not. Uh, so exposing to the right is basically the idea, for those that aren't familiar with it, is to slightly overexpose your image in some cases, but you want to push all of the light. You want the sensor to capture as much light as possible. So without clipping your highlights. That's the idea. Now, on my monochrome camera, my Pentax, I definitely expose to the right. because that camera has a very high tendency to clip the highlights. So, well, let me let me qualify this statement a little bit because that makes no sense what I just said, but it does. All right. So exposing to the right, the idea being is to bring in as much light into the camera as possible without clipping the highlights. That's the general idea. So you're either going to use lower aperture, slower shutter speed, or higher ISO, right? Whatever it is in the exposure, quote unquote, triangle, to bring in as much light as possible, which is primarily going to be shutter speed or aperture. And I don't normally shoot that way because for me, my shooting, the most important thing is having a fast enough shutter speed. And then when you do that, you have to shoot wide open. And then from there, I try to um, I try to manage that, right? Shutter speed and aperture. And then I let the ISO bounce wherever it needs to be to accommodate the shutter speed that I want. So birding's a good example, right? I'm shooting at 1/2000th, 1/4000th. My aperture is going to be wide open most of the time, except for the exceptions that you saw where it was really bright out. Uh, I just let the ISO go wherever it needs to be. I don't worry about that. But the other idea between the reason you want to bring in as much light as possible into the camera is because you want to be able to minimize the amount of noise that is in the shadow areas. Because you can always bring the exposure back down. And if you haven't clipped your highlights, you can bring the exposure back down and retain really good detail in the shadows. So what you're trying to do is maintain shadow detail and not clip your highlights by exposing to the right. I don't normally shoot that way personally. I shoot to get the exposure as close as I can that I want in camera or what I want the final image to be. And I don't worry about trying to recover shadows so much because the shadow areas, generally speaking, are not that important in my photography. Uh, I guess there's scenarios like in landscape photography, very high dynamic range scenes where you might have to bring up the shadows to balance the exposure overall in the image. But I would rather bracket the image because a lot of landscape photography, the dynamic range is so high, no camera's really going to be able to handle that. So I end up bracketing images a lot of times if I'm going to be doing high dynamic range. So I'd say I tend to bracket my images before I try exposing to the right. Because if I find myself because there's not a lot of wiggle room on a micro four thirds sensor, plus or minus 2 stops. That's about it, to be honest, right? Before you start getting a little bit too much noise in the shadows. Highlights, actually pretty good at not clipping highlights, but you do get no shadow in the noise pretty quickly when you go beyond 2 stops. So I tend to bracket if I think I'm going to need more light, right, in the shadow areas. So yeah, I don't expose to the right as a rule of thumb. Now I mentioned the Pentax monochrome that I expose to the right. What I meant to say was I use the highlight metering, right? I don't know what it's called exactly, but what it does is it meters for the highlights and not the shadows because that camera tends to clip highlights very, very easily. And I found that in most scenarios, I can shoot with the highlight metering so that it never clips the highlights and it tends to underexpose a little bit the shadow areas, but that's okay. Like I said, I'm usually fine with the underexposing or the shadow areas being a little noisy because I can just pull the blacks down and get rid of the noise by adjusting the sliders so that, nothing shows at all except black. But I do that. Now, the Olympus cameras and OM system have a similar metering system, but it's a little bit different. They have something called spot high. Spot high, what it does is the metering is tied to the focus point. So it spot meters to the focus point on on lower end cameras like EM10, it only works on the center, okay? But if you have an EM5 or OM5, OM1, EM1, you can link the metering to the focus point. So you could do spot high on the, say, a cloud, and it'll meter that cloud all the way up to within one stop of it clipping. So what does that mean? So if I'm taking a picture of a scene, like I will do this sometimes for landscapes if I don't want to bracket the shot, because sometimes bracketing is not an option, right? And you need to capture the image in one frame. And that's when I will use something like exposing to the right. And I do that by using the spot high meter, where I point the meter to the cloud and meter it there. And then I may pick a different focus point later. So I'll lock the exposure on the clouds, whatever it meters for there. So it's going to essentially expose all the way to the as far right as it can without clipping any highlights automatically using the spot high feature, which is different than the Pentax. The Pentax, as far as I can tell, is trying to make the highlights a middle gray, which so grossly underexposes. But it depends on the scene. I'm still getting used to that Pentax monochrome. I don't have a real feel for everything about it right now. But when it comes to Olympus cameras, I definitely know that spot high can be very useful if you need to capture it in one frame. And that will by default expose to the right automatically by pushing the highlights as far as it can without clipping within one stop, and then bringing in as much light as possible in the rest of the scene. So I know that was a long explanation, but uh, hopefully that makes sense in my thinking on that. Okay. So Alvin, I don't normally expose to the right. If I need to, I bracket. And if I have to, I'll use the spot high. If it's an Olympus camera. If it's other camera, you have to use different metering methods, right? Spot meter on the brightest part, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's so many different ways to expose to the right. Um, David Hill says, my favorite birding lens is the 75 to 300. The weight is just right for my handheld stuff. Cropping can be an issue, but I get some satisfactory. Absolutely. As we saw earlier, right? Uh, and if you go on to Flickr and search for that lens, I think you can search for that lens. At least on my page you can. I have a whole album for that lens. And you'll be impressed, I think, with the images. And I know 2 wedding photographers in Orlando using the ZF for wedding photography and using it properly without adding a grip. Yeah, that's right. Right? I mean, there's something about using a vintage camera in public, right? Particularly like events, if you're a professional. Like I was walking around with my thingamajig, my Godox Luxmaster. Where's that picture of me here? So I was walking around with this thing, this giant, vintage looking flash. It's not vintage, it's a modern flash. It's just vintage looking. And you can if I had that flash on a Nikon Zf, that would be totally vintage, right? But all modern, right? Modern digital sensor, modern flash. Uh, but that would look so vintage and so cool, and people seem to react to that in a very positive way when they see vintage looking equipment, right? And they're not quite as freaked out because when you walk, I don't know why Hollywood is guilty of this, but they make photographers look like creepers, right? Like lowlifes in society. Anytime you see a photographer, with very few exceptions, if there's a photographer in a movie, the guy is a weirdo, okay? Some kind of creepy looking dude or paparazzi, whatever. And you're walking around with a modern digital camera, you know, that immediately, I think, triggers people's perception of the kind of pictures you're taking, and they're just kind of put off a little bit. But when you have a little vintage camera that's kind of neat looking and fun, and it's just so much more fun, and you own it. You are there to take pictures. When you got some big honking lens like or flash like that, and then if you have a vintage camera next to it, like a ZF, people are not going. I didn't find people, and I've been to a few events where I've used this flash like that. People are like, "Come over, take my picture." Or if I do go to take their picture, they're ready. They smile, they see that giant flash, they see a vintage camera potentially, and they're like, "Yeah, take my picture," right? Or they 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 may reject you from taking their picture, 'cause I've had people say, "No, don't take my picture," but they're not offensive about it. They're like, "No, no, I don't like my picture taken." You know, they act more shy than they act offended, right? With this kind of flash. So, uh, I can see where taking a ZF, for example, to a wedding, which would be an awesome camera for an event like that, together with a flash like this Luxmaster, uh, and just having a great time with it, and getting less people offended or angry or mean because you're taking their picture, and more people willing to get their picture taken. If you had a ZF and this flash with it, I guarantee you will get more smiles at events with a setup like that, because I certainly do because of that flash. I mean, I was just walking into the event and people were like, "Oh, let me take my picture with my kids here and stuff." You know, this was yesterday. I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I got a picture. Um, didn't have any of my settings right because I was just getting there, but anyhow, let me go back to the chat. And thanks, Rob. Always appreciate your insightful opinions. I've learned a lot from your channel. Thank you. I try. I try. I really try. Always vet everything I say and do your own due diligence, but you know, I try. I was able to get a grip full plate for my Pen F. Totally agree with you when it comes to tripod mounting. Yes, I have one for my Pen F too. I only use it time to time. I don't use my Pen F on a tripod as much as I used to. Uh, I like it as an everyday camera now more, so I put a leather, but the leather has this. I got the leather grip, not grip, but the leather cover, half cover. But this bottom part is aluminum inside, underneath the leather, and it's a full plate all the way across. So it protects the whole bottom of the camera. And I can put a little Arca Swiss plate on here if I want. There's a little screw here. But so this is effectively a full plate, but it's not the same as having the Arca Swiss part built in, right? Which I have one of those that has the wood handle on it, which is really nice. And I did that because I was putting bigger lenses on this than this kit lens. But now when I take the Pen F out, I normally just have this kit lens or my 25 millimeter 1.8 or 17 1.8. Those are the lenses I use with this now. So I don't really need a tripod. I don't have too many scenarios. And if I do, then I just put a little plate on here sometimes. But love my Pen F, man. Can't wait for the Pen F2, if ever. And are you doing the annual YouTube meetup? Yes, not this year, but for 2025. Yeah, but I know what you mean. Come probably late January, early February. And the three-legged thing has L bracket called Oly, more reasonable price, good quality. Okay, very good. Um, yeah, the three-legged thing, the really right stuff bracket is really thick too. It adds a lot of weight to the camera, just so you know. I don't know about the three-legged thing. I haven't seen that in person, but a lot of people like that one. Um, oh, Walter's popping in. Hey, Walter, that was a while ago. You're probably gone now, but good to see you. Say hi to Deb. Uh, and Robin says the 56 is a good portrait lens. F1.4 should have a nice background blur. Absolutely. You saw that picture of my dog. I mean, just crop that image in your mind a little bit for micro four thirds, because I was shooting that on an APS-C. But if you crop it in a little bit, because the depth of field does not change, only your field of view changes. That's one of the biggest misperceptions I think about depth of field and shallow depth of field. Is micro four thirds has the same depth of field as a full frame sensor, but the field of view is just wider or narrower, right? So you have to step back, and depth of field changes with distance. And that Panasonic 15 is an excellent lens and very small and compact. Yeah, I was hoping for a Black Friday deal, but I'm not really seeing it. Those 1.4 Sigma lenses were all originally designed for APS-C. That's why they seem a bit large on M43. Yeah, that's true. It's the locking mechanism for the lens hood. Oh, okay. Then definitely don't worry about it. Um, Cool, I watch all the reruns. My question is, what's best lens to get a blurry background with micro four thirds? Is it the 45 1.2? It depends. 45 1.2 is a portrait lens, so if you're going to be pretty close to your subjects, then yeah, the wider the aperture, the better. So just remember, blurry background, we're talking about depth of field, is affected by aperture and distance, not focal length. Okay? Now, the focal length dictates the distance you need to get the field of view or the frame that you want. I get it. The two are related, but ultimately depth of field is just aperture and distance. So if you have a wide aperture at the same distance, you're going to get the same depth of field regardless of the sensor size. It's just a matter of the field of view. But I would say the 56 1.4 is a better value than the 45 1.2 for most people. A lot of people, a lot of professionals, they're going to get the 45 1.2 every time. But the 56 1.4, it's just a little bit tighter and has a really wide aperture, and it's tack sharp lens, and it's very creamy and smooth. It's such a good lens. So I would say the 56 1.4, if you're thinking about doing portraits, is probably one of the better lenses to get. Certainly the 45 1.2, you're going to get, without a question, better image quality and better compatibility for the other features in the OM system lineup. And I would say, things like in-camera focus stacking. I mean, things you may not use anyway. But ultimately, getting an original OM system lens is going to be the most compatible with an OM system camera and have less problems potentially in any other kind of area like autofocusing, in-camera features, things like that. But it's quite a bit more expensive, like 3 times as much as a 56 1.4. So I would probably push you towards the 56 1.4 over the 45 1.2 unless you're doing professional paid work, then maybe go with the 45 1.2 where you can justify that expense. All that said, the 45 1.8 is not a shabby lens either, okay? And it's tiny. So that's why I don't have, uh, that's why I didn't buy the 56 1.4 for mine, because I have the 45 1.8 and that's close enough and does what I need it to do. But don't get obsessed with blurry backgrounds. You have to think about all the other things about composition. And, I personally, I like to use light to separate my subject. So I try to make sure my subject is brighter than the background. And that gives you enough subject separation from the background than just using a blurry background, right? But sometimes I get it. Blurry background is nice. I know God, my friend is obsessed with it. She's just obsessed with it. She was like looking at my, and it's in her head because I was showing her on my camera f2.8 versus f4, right? And she goes, God, look at the difference on that, you know? I'm like, there's so little difference. It's just so minute. And then what I had to tell her was, I'm shooting micro four thirds because she doesn't know what I'm shooting. I don't think she knows what micro four thirds is, but I'm shooting micro four thirds. So and she's shooting an R5, okay? Canon R5 with a 24 to 105 f4. And she has the 70 to 200 f2.8. So she's like all into that blurry background. And it's not the one friend that I have two friends that have this exact same setup. But anyhow, and then I told her, I said, well, you know, on my camera, you're really looking at f5.6 and f8 compared to your camera, you know. I didn't say that, but you know, if I threw that on top of the fact that there's not much difference between 2.8 and f4, that I'm shooting micro four thirds, I mean, it would just totally blow away any perception she had that 2.8 and f4 makes a big difference. Um, I just I just I just don't get the obsession with this shallow depth of field when it's just so minor. It's so minor, the difference between 2.8 and f4, especially on a full frame camera. People don't understand is your distance from your subject that and that makes the biggest difference uh, in how blurry the background is. So if you can get close enough to your subject and then you combine that with lighting and composition and all of that, you're going to get a terrific image without worrying about a difference between f2.8 and f4. Anyhow, okay, as you say, Rob, the 56 millimeter is the most compact and it's the only one I choose to own. Great quality images from it. One of my sharpest lenses up there with the Panasonic 200 f2.8. That's saying a lot. But I can tell you I have no problem with the sharpness of that 56 1.4. But I haven't compared it directly with the 45 1.2. I'm just making the assumption it would be better in some other ways besides sharpness. All right, because there's a lot of things with lens characteristics, right? And this side towards screen, good morning, good to see you. And Alvin, you're welcome. I try. And hi, Rob, hypothetical question for you. All of the camera disappears tomorrow. Meaning all of my cameras disappear tomorrow. How are you building your kit back up from Camera Store right now? Wow. Well, I can tell you what's not going to be in there is a Sony a7R5. Definitely. That's not going to be there. But I would definitely replace my Olympus Pen F. I would definitely get an OM1 Mark II instead of the OM1 Mark I. Those would be the minimum. Those would be the two cameras. Then, so I would start there, and then I would build my lenses back up. I would get the 25 1.4 Leica, the 14 to 42 kit lens, the 40 to 150 kit lens, the 75 to 300 kit lens, the 300 f4. I probably wouldn't buy the 75 1.8 again. I don't use that lens hardly at all. Um, I would get the 15 millimeter 1.7. So that would probably be it. I'm trying to think. And I would have to get the 7 to 14. It'd be a Nikon Zf. Nikon Zf would be in there. And probably a Fuji X-T3. I don't think I would get the XH2 again. I like the camera, but it's just a little bit too big and bulky. So I'd probably step back to an X-T3 on the Fuji side. So it'd be a Fuji X-T3, a Nikon Zf, and then some complementary lenses with that, right? And then, on Sony, I would buy, oh, I don't know what I would buy from Sony. I probably wouldn't buy a Sony again. If I did, it'd probably be like the A7C Mark II. If I got a Sony, that would probably be the one I'd get. Um, in fact, I would love to get rid of my A7R5 and get that A7C Mark II instead. But I'm also tempted by just their APS-C lineup too. I mean, why? But you can get the A7C Mark II full frame for a little bit more, and it's a better camera overall. Anyway, that's where I would be. And then whatever other fun cameras. I love my LX5. I love my LX100. Those are fun cameras. I would start buying all those back. But if I had nothing else, I would have to get that core Pen F and OM1. Unless you're watching a Hallmark movie, then photographers are portrayed as gorgeous women who is a struggling mom. Yeah, I know. I don't watch Hallmark. I don't have cable. Neo, how you doing, Neo? Good to see you. It's been a while. And thanks, Eric. That $1,100 deal seems sweet, but if it can't match my other cameras, it would be a waste of money. Sure. I assume you're talking about the OM1 Mark 1. And Paul is here. Good to see you. Down in Maslin on vacation, but checking in. Oh, well, thanks for stopping in on your vacation. I appreciate that. And Steve says, "Hi, Rob. I got good BF deals." Did my chat just jump all the way up again? I hate when that happens. Because I know I've read that before. For some reason, the Nikon DF feels special having a silver one. I want the black one too. Yeah, yeah. The DF, the images from it are special. I think they just feel different. I guess it's because it's just a low resolution camera, relatively speaking, 16 megapixels, right? When I have a 60 and a 40 and even 20 is more than 16, right? But yeah, it's very nostalgic using it, getting that shutter slap and mirror slap, I should say. Signature says, L bracket, I now use a small rig cage and accessories that allow me to fit a screw on the base of the camera, the hot shoe. Oh, that makes sense. So you use the half cage and then you put an L bracket, Arca Swiss or an Arca Swiss plate, and that effectively becomes an L bracket. That's cool. That's a good idea. And thanks for all the info. With your knowledge and excellent communication skills, OM Systems should offer you an ambassadorship. So many of their current ambassadors are mainly just salesmen. Um, well, that's the job they give them. They're actually very good photographers. They're excellent, better photographers than I am, and more knowledgeable. But as ambassadors, you get I imagine they get gigs to go fly somewhere and take amazing photos. And then of course they have to sell the camera. Like I was offered a trip out to Vegas and paid flight, hotel. I turned it down because uh they wanted me to have links and interviews, and I'm like, God, I don't want to do all that work. If I'm gonna go to Vegas, man, I'm gonna have some fun. I'm thinking about it. The offer's still open, but I don't know. I don't, with these paid trips and things come obligations. Like I'm still getting offers to review products. I got to review this light bar. Ugh. I mean, it's a nice product, but I kinda regret taking on some of these reviews because there's just so much work, and I'd rather go out and do photos. Like, I really wanted to go out and do photos this morning, and then I was thinking if I do that, then I'm not gonna have the energy to work on this review for this light bar that technically I'm supposed to have done by tomorrow, and I got a lens that's way overdue that I was supposed to review. It's been months and months. Took me. I don't think I think they've given up on me. They don't even ask anymore. "Are you done yet? Are you done yet?" Uh, yeah, I think, I don't know. And I still get offers for reviews, and I'm like, I haven't responded to a few for lenses and stuff. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic here, but, uh, yeah, they definitely considered me back when they were Olympus. They were thinking about having me come on as an ambassador, but I kinda communicated I wasn't interested to be an ambassador because of the obligations, because you gotta work, right? So it doesn't mean that the other ambassadors that you see are not excellent photographers and very knowledgeable, and they do share, like Lee Hoy and Emily, uh, they do share a lot of their knowledge, and their photography is way better than mine. But they're also obligated to do some work, right? Doing interviews or going out in the field, even if they're paid trips, and if you love photography, I get it, but I'm just too, I don't know. I just I just don't want any more work than I already have. I just want to have fun and enjoy photography, and my 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 real passion is helping other people, right? And anyhow, that's where I'm at. Okay. You mentioned your A7R5 was an impulse buy. What would be the full frame body you'd pair with your M43 kit? Maybe the ZF, but I have a DF, so 6 of one, half the other. But it might be the ZF. That would be a nice system. Or the Z8. The Z8 is really tempting. The Nikon Z8. I don't know. That would be a that would be a nice camera to have. If they were the same price, the Z8 and the A7R5 at the time that I bought it, I would have got the Z8 instead, and I'd be much happier right now. Nothing wrong with the A7R5 in terms of its technical quality, right? Produces amazingly sharp, high detailed images, as you would expect from 60 megapixels. The image stabilization, the autofocus in particular is pretty amazing when the light's good. In low light, it suffers a little, but for the most part, the autofocus is spot on and very reliable and easy, right? It just locks on. Ton of features, right? Has everything you could want. The menus are still a train wreck, but so is every camera, to be honest. Uh, but it just feels like a piece of gear. It doesn't feel like a camera to me. And this is the same complaint I had with my Sony NEX and why I switched to Nikon from Sony many, many years ago is it just felt like a piece of technology. And that's all up here. It's in my head, right? If I was a real photographer, it wouldn't matter what the gear is. I would just go out and shoot with it and shoot with a passion for photography, right? But sometimes the camera, for me, it's kind of there's a synergy there between me and the camera and photography. It all has to gel for me. Um, and that's why the Pen F is like never going anywhere. That's why I have two of them. It's 'cause in case this one ever breaks, I got another one sealed away in my dry box here, ready to go. Should anything ever happen to that one. But yeah, to answer your question, if I think about it, probably be the Nikon Z8. I'd probably skip the ZF and go Z8. Because I just want a high resolution sensor. I don't know why. The files are a pain in the butt to edit. Thanks, I have the 45 1.2. I was making sure that it was best for. Okay. And, oh, thank you. Wow, I really appreciate that. Awesome, I appreciate the super chat there. I thought I saw something yellow over here on the sidebar, but I can't, it's being blocked by something on my screen. But thank you, JR, I appreciate that. Shooting wide open or as close to it on M43 seems to give me the best results for portraits. Yes. If we're talking about depth of field, yeah, get as close as you can and as wide open as you can. Uh, I've got the 75 for concert photography. It's great for that. Then got a deal on the 45 1.2. Maybe if I started from scratch, I got the 56, but maybe too short for concert. Yeah, it'd be a little bit short for concert photography. Because in concert photography, you're usually in the, down in front. But that could still be a ways off from, say, the drummer in the background or the guitarist when he goes to the other side, etc. 75 is perfect for that. The 56 would be a little bit short, I think. And Blaine says, I've been tempted to get the 150 to 600 for my EM1X. I already know what I'd shoot with it over the winter, and that length is perfect between that or the 300. Yeah, I have a little experience with the 150 to 600. I'm going to see if I can borrow one for a little while. I feel like, and I'm going to show you an image. So this is one of my albums on Flickr. I'll put a link to this in the chat. So I shot with it for about 30 minutes one day and did these hummingbirds. And all the EXIF data is here. So I'm at 600 millimeters, 1/1000th of a second, ISO 6400. So I'm at a high ISO. So you can, just to give you an idea of the lighting, and I processed this with DxO, of course. But the amount of detail I was able to pull out of that lens, wide open, at its longest focal length, 600 millimeters, at a high ISO, says a lot about this lens. It tells you this lens is very, very sharp. Now, when you watch a review online, this is the problem, is when you watch reviews online, and it doesn't matter what lens, telephoto, they always say, yeah, it's a little soft on the long end. But relative to what, right? When they say it's a little bit soft on the long end, I was able to extract so much detail. And then if you look here, this is cropped down to 4 megapixels. I didn't even fill the frame. How about this one? This is cropped down to about 4 megapixels. And this is at ISO 12,800, 1/4000th, wide open at 600 millimeters. Again, the amount of detail I was able to pull out. This one might be a little lower. Yeah, I was at 1/800th, so I was going for motion blur. 1/800th of a second, ISO 1600. I mean, you cannot complain about the detail you're getting from this lens on the long end wide open. And if you have enough light, you are set. Okay, I need to go back to my other window. So I have no problems with the optical quality of this lens. Another really good thing about that lens is the image stabilization is superb. It's as good as my 300 millimeter f4 in my opinion. Uh, so this lens has everything going for it except for the size. To get a 600 millimeters at f6.3, you just cannot avoid the size of that lens. I don't care what people say. I hear this all the time, that this lens, there's maybe a little bit on the back end, but then there might be some compromise in image quality, right? If you try to make that lens smaller and make it for micro four thirds, the way that lens is as is perfect, and it cannot be any smaller. Any modifications that they try to do to make that lens smaller, it's going to compromise the image quality. And it's not gonna make much 100 grams, maybe they might be able to save. So anyway, optical quality image stabilization on that lens, excellent, right? f6.3, just bright enough. It's not great, it's not f4, but yeah, it's really good for that focal length. So the two issues I have with it, is it two? Well, let's start with one, size and weight. I just I get it. If you want a lens with that reach and that speed, yeah, it's gonna be heavy, big and heavy. But that's the only problem I have with it, is I don't think I would ever take it out because of the size and weight. If I need that kind of reach, um, I'm too far, I'm just too far away. These hummingbird pictures I took, I wasn't that far away. Okay, I was probably maybe 20 feet from those birds, but they're so small, even at 600 millimeters, you can't even fill the frame with a hummingbird. Um, oh yeah, the other thing. So size and weight is why I'm not getting it. May not be a problem for a lot of people. And if you put on a monopod, what difference does it make, right? The monopod's carrying it for you. But the other thing was the autofocus speed. It's fast enough for most things, but when I go from point A to point B, say minimum focusing distance to say something near infinity, it is nowhere near as fast as my 300 millimeter f4. Now I have no way to consistently test if I'm going to miss shots because the autofocus is slower, because it has to be a consistent moving subject, right? There's no way for me to test that. But intuitively, it tells me that if most of the time birds are going side to side and staying within a normal range of your focal plane, but uh, it's not a pro lens and it does not have pro focusing speed, where if you put on a 300 millimeter f4 and you go point A to point B, it's like that. I mean, that lens focuses fast. The 600, the 150 to 600, you can see it. You can, I mean, it's like 1 second, okay, versus a fraction of a second. So it's still very fast, but it's not a fraction of a second. It's like a full second to go from, say, minimum to infinity. And then because it has this slower aperture, so less light is getting into the sensor, it's gonna stress the autofocus system even more. The fact that it's very sharp is a big plus in its on in its favor, because that helps the autofocus system as well. But you're dealing with very shallow depth of field because of the focal length. You're dealing with less light at f6.3, and you have slower focusing motors. So um, this is why this is not a pro lens, right? And that's the big difference between this and a pro lens. As with all other lenses, say versus a pro lens, is primarily the autofocusing speed and the amount of light that gets in. Pro lenses are what? f2.8, f1.2, f4 on the 300, et cetera, et cetera. All these lenses let more light in, but I would not hesitate to recommend this lens for 99% of the people if the size and weight is not a deal breaker. If the size and weight is not a deal breaker, this is an excellent lens by all accounts. And the autofocusing speed that I just talked about, it going from point A to infinity, is not as fast, is probably not going to be an issue for most sports action type photography. Like I said, it's really probably only going to be a problem when something is moving very fast towards you, like changing focal length constantly. Okay. I want the Panasonic 202.8. Yeah. It is tempting, isn't it? I'm a little tempted myself. Don't get me started on that lens. I've been avoiding that lens because it's Panasonic. Not that there's anything wrong with Panasonic. I love two lenses, but there's this one. This is for my Pentax. I'm really disappointed with the kit lens on my Pentax. I'm waiting for a better price. I've seen this for under $200, this lens. I'm thinking about a wide lens. Oh, somebody bought my 12 to 100. I wanted this lens. It was used for 600. It had a few scratches on the barrel, but it looked fine otherwise. I wanted this one. All right, it's gone. This is gone. Yeah, I'm sort of thinking, do I want to get a wide angle? Oh, this is gone now. Damn it. All this stuff sold today, or this weekend, apparently. Anyway, I was looking at a GFX 100 because I was thinking if I get rid of my Sony, but the problem is all the freaking lenses are so expensive. I just don't want to get into that because you can get the body, but then when you start buying all the lenses, like when I bought my freaking Fuji, oh my God, I spent so much money on lenses. uh, so that's why I'm not getting my Fuji X-H2. That's why I'm not getting a GFX because when I start looking at the lenses I would want to get for it, I'm like, no. Oh my God, they're so expensive. And John Follows us here. Hi from the UK. Been watching TV for the last hour. Switched to Nikon about a year ago and must say that the Z8 is a superb machine. I especially like the fully electronic shutter. I thought it had a mechanical shutter. I mean, I know they'll do electronic. I thought it was the Z9 that had the electronic shutter. But yeah, the Z8. I think yeah, you're submitting images with the Z8 on my photo editing live streams, right? I couldn't remember if you had the Z8 or the DF. But yeah, I'm jealous. I would definitely get a Z8 if I didn't have a DF right now. And yeah, the 150 to 600 is full frame lens formula. Using center part of the M43 should give theoretically good sharpness. That's the idea, right? The edges of the frame are usually the weakest part of the lens. And OM1 for half price and only 200 more than OM5 makes me very suspicious about something new coming from OM Systems. Of course, many people have thought that for years. I know it's unpredictable. Who knows? But it is tough, man. It's tough to sell an OM5 when an OM1 is selling for like within $200 of a price. Hey Rob, I totally agree with the 75 to 300 called Sunny Lens. I made so. Whoops. Looks like he got cut off there. And any reliable news? Nope. No, I know nothing. I don't know. I feel like I've seen this question before, but then, yeah, my chat jumped up. Sorry. Oh, yeah, the 75-1.8 is definitely an awesome lens. I've taken some, I did one event for that. I don't know if I made an album for it though. Let me see. No, I didn't make an album because I don't shoot that much with that lens. I do have this video though. So I think this is the 75. Yeah, 75 1.8 in the Pen F. Yeah. This is on my Flickr page. Really it's perfect. It was a perfect lens for this scenario of catching these guys, uh, kayaking. They were the perfect distance. Yeah, that's anyhow, that's not showing the bokeh though. This was also shot with the 75 1.8. It's a sharp lens. I mean, bottom line, it's super sharp, and yeah, if the bokeh's creamy, that's great. I don't recall because I don't use it that much, but I have no reason to think it's not. And I just never use that lens. And all right, supporter here for 99 cents. I really appreciate that, Susanna. Welcome to the club. I do have memberships now on my channel. So if you want to support the work that I do here, the help that I give out to photographers, both online and offline for that matter, it's greatly appreciated becoming a member. I really appreciate that. I don't really have any members only perks, so to speak, but uh, it's just one way to support everything that I do here. And Paul says the Panaleica 2.8 is fantastic. Can thoroughly recommend it, even with the 1.4 teleconverter. It's great. Yeah. Yeah, the images I've seen from it are amazing. And Robin says, I set the focus limiter to the distance I think the subjects will be. It helps slower lenses focus faster. They don't move as fast. Yeah, the 150 to 600 has that switch on it, right? I forget what the distances markings are. But yeah, I use it the ones that are on the lens, but I didn't think about using one on the in the camera. I find just using the lens one is fast, right? Uh, but you can certainly limit it even more so. That's a good tip. Thanks for sharing that. That's an excellent tip actually. And the Gray Vanzini is here. Good morning. Good to see you. And I guess the GFX body is the gateway drug to expensive lens paint. Yeah. Yeah, the lenses are so expensive. I'd rather go, man, that chat is from this morning, but um, I'd almost rather go Leica. If I'm gonna start spending thousands of dollars on lenses, I mean, I've spent a boatload on that 300 f4, but if I'm gonna do that consistently for some small primes and stuff, I would almost go Leica. Oh, I don't know. Let's one day I'm gonna hit the lottery and then I would do it, but I don't make that much money. And Rob says, I'm considering upgrading Panaleica 100 to 400 to the Mark II version that would accept my 1.4 teleconverter. Would be a cheaper and lighter option to the 150 to 600. Hmm. I don't see why not. I just think you'll be at f8 though on that, right? That's the biggest problem. Assuming sharpness and everything is fine. The 100 to 400 is 6.3 times 1.4. Oh, you're going to be closer to f9. So, oops, yeah. So, yeah, I was just looking it up. Yeah, so, yeah, you're going to be at f9 at 600 millimeters. That's that's going to be rough. You're going to have to be in very good light. So I would think about that twice. uh, if it's something you might occasionally use, that's fine. But if you're going to consistently be at 600 millimeters, excuse me, You don't want to be at f9. That's going to be a headache. Okay, that GFX body is definitely a gateway drug. I figured maybe it isn't a bad idea to go GFX IQ to match the speed and computational features. Huh. I don't know. The GFX is such a specialized camera. I mean, everyone says Olympus is niche or OM system is niche because they focus on sports and wildlife, but GFX to me is super niche, man, because it only does one thing. Really just takes 100 megapixel pictures. Doesn't really do much else very well. The Leica Q3 for Rob next. Just heard it here. No, not a Q. I don't know if I could get another fixed lens camera. I mean, that's not only fixed lens, it's fixed focal length. That would be a little rough for me. I like my LX100 Mark II with the zoom on it. I'm not a big fan of fixed focal length. That would be hard to deal with. And thank you. I've been a member before, but had to cancel my credit card due to someone shopped my credit card somewhere in the world. So I'm now a member. Oh, okay. Appreciate that. Uh, yes, speed versus weight and size. Yep. Okay. It looks like I hit the end of the chat. Unless if I missed a question, you can feel free to ask it again. But I think I'm running out of steam here. I should have finished this coffee. Now it's cold. Now that it's winter time, I need to get those little mug heaters. I have one somewhere. I think it's in my desk over there, but um see, hi Rob. Been watching TV. Why did my chat jump again? Oh, thanks for all your time and help. Yep, happy to help. So, yeah, right. This is the event that I did. And this is with flash. I just wanted to show you the difference that flash makes. I had two 8200s, one, on each side of the stage, and then I had an on-camera flash, and I just kind of walked around the bottom of the stage and took these pictures. This one here is what? The 12 to 40 Pro at 2.8 ISO 800. And then look at the image without flash. So obviously I had a misfire here for some reason. I probably tried to take a shot too soon after the last one. Whatever the reason was, I had a misfire. Or actually, I was doing some of this intentionally. I was intentionally turning the flash off so I could show you this comparison. I think that's what this shot is. I don't think this was a misfire. Um, but yeah, it makes a huge difference. And yeah, that's me. So I was using this on-camera flash as kind of fill flash for the front. And then you can see the shadows down here. But you see the light behind the curtain here? There's no light behind the curtain here, though. That's my flash firing. I don't know if I have a wide shot. This is a little bit wider shot. But I had flashes all the way to the behind this curtain. I had flashes, one on the right side, one on the left side. And this shot here was done without the fill flash. So you can see I'm not getting as much light on the front. So this was one of the mistakes I made last night is I didn't use the on-camera flash enough. I was worried about getting shadows, but once I turned the fill flash on, see the difference? This is without the fill flash. This is with the fill flash on my camera coming from the front. So yeah, this is even more obvious. I was using the fill flash. Because you can see the light on her legs, the light here on his boot, and then his face is very well illuminated. This had the fill flash, but there's a lot of images like with the fill flash, you don't get these dark shadows under the eyes and under the neck. If I go back to the one where I didn't use the fill flash, you can see there's dark shadows under the eyes. A little bit, well, the neck, she's standing in front of the stage lighting. But it's particularly under the eyes, right? You start getting these harsher shadows without the fill flash. And then, yeah. Anyway, I've just started vetting these images. But I just thought I'd share just a couple. Eventually, I'll have all these done. I have about 100 images I think I'll deliver. And some of them are better than others because some have the fill flash, some don't. And that's one thing I learned last night is make sure I have my on-camera flash on for fill flash in addition to the stage. But that's the first time I ever had to do lighting on the stage myself. So it's kind of a learning experience. But that's something I learned last night was that if you have only used the stage the way the lighting was, the light coming down from the top, you get these raccoon eyes. And I have to use a fill flash in the front. And have you shot lower light or more property stage light photography, like oh, it's funny you should bring this up because I just showed what it is with your MFT gear without flash. It's very, very hard without flash. You're going to be at high ISO. I've done it, but not low light stage light, I'll show you. Let me show you one. Let me go back to that image. Where is it? This one. So there's a couple of things, right? You have to be at like 1/125th or 1/250th of a second to freeze the motion. If you want motion blur, you can do that. Then you can go down to 1/60th, and I did that a little bit too. But you can see I'm at ISO 800 here already. And this is easily about 3 stops underexposed. So I would have to be at what, 1632? I would have to be at least ISO 6400 to get this shot exposed properly. So, and I'm at f2.8, by the way. So you definitely need an f2.8 lens with your micro four thirds gear. If you can shoot a prime, even better. If you can shoot with like a 1.8 or a 1.2 even, you would be way better off. Because look at my focal length here. I'm at 15 millimeters. So I think you would need the 17 1.2, the 25 1.2, and the 45 1.2 to do this kind of photography. Then you'll be okay. So if you have very fast lenses, you got to have at least a 1.8. If you can afford the 1.2s, even better. But if you can't get the 1.2s, the 25, there's a 25 1.4 from Panasonic is very affordable. The 17 1.7 from Panasonic also, and then the 75 1.8 and the 56 1.4. You're going to have to go all primes to do low light stage photography and shoot wide open to keep your shutter speeds up and your ISOs low. That would be the way to go. Because as you can see from that image, at f2.8, I would have had to be at 6400 ISO, right? 3264. I would have been closer to 12,000 ISO to get that shot because I was easily 3 stops underexposed without flash. So I would have been at. So let me start over. That scene that I just showed, I would have to be at ISO 12,600 to get this shot properly exposed. If I had an let's say at f2, that would save me a full stop. I would be at ISO 6400, and then I could lower my shutter speed another stop. I could get down to ISO 3200, and then maybe go to, that would be it. So for this shot, you could do 1/125th of the second, f1.7, and maybe ISO 16 to ISO 3200 to get that properly exposed. And then you'd have to do some post-processing as well. Like DxO PhotoLab 8 would be best to clean that up and make it look really clean and sharp. So it can be done. So yeah. So again, 25 1.4, well, starting from the bottom, 15 1.7, 25 1.4, 45 1.8, or 56 1.4, even better, and the 75 1.8. And you could do it, but you're going to be at ISO 1600, ISO 3200, even with those apertures. And then you're going to have to process with PhotoLab 8, and then you'll get some really nice images. No problem, and you won't need flash. That's what I would do. And Marcus Pix is a light. Yeah, Marcus Pix is the best thing that's happened to YouTube in a long time. He's pretty awesome. And Marcus Pix is having his Christmas giveaway. Lots of lighting to win. Yeah, I saw that. It's better. I'm not gonna. I would love to get free stuff from Marcus, but I would feel a little bad if I won something from him, because there's other people that I think could probably need it more than I do. Because I can buy my lighting gear and write it off and as a tax thing, and a lot of times I get them free from manufacturers anyway if I want to, right? I'm always getting offers for lighting equipment. So it just doesn't make sense for me to email Marcus to try to get a free lighting thing from him. Uh, it just wouldn't be in the spirit of things, I think, right? And Eric says, I wouldn't mind going GFX 102 or Hasselblad X2D, a 100 megapixel image of the file that allows a massive canvas to work on. Being in a pixel addict, that's heaven. Yeah, I know, right? I would love to have a Hasselblad, man. I've been shopping some digital backs for my film Hasselblad camera, but they're expensive too. But I can buy the lenses relatively cheap, right? Because it's the old Hasselblad V system. And I wouldn't need 100 megapixels. I was also looking at those Polaroid, well, not Polaroid, but the Fujifilm. Somebody 3D printed one and sells it on Amazon. It's like you can put in Fujifilm Square Instax film and shoot it on your Hasselblad. That would be fun too. I think I'll buy that. That would be a lot of fun. And then Neo says, as a content photographer and MFT shooter, DxO and fast prime lenses are your best bet. I've got great results from the 45-1.2 and the 75-1.8. DxO is a gift. Yep. So that pretty much sums up what I just said, but he did it in one sentence. Thanks, Neo. Okay, no, I'm definitely going to go now. I'm definitely out of steam. So you guys have a great weekend, and I will be back at least on Tuesday for my shopping live stream, where we're going to focus on maybe some laptops and computer gear as well, and then look for some deals for photography. But it seems like hard drives and laptops, the other things that we use as photographers, are just as important, and some of you may need to upgrade, right? So we'll talk about that. Thanks again for everyone being here. You guys are awesome. Thanks for your support through the memberships, buying me a coffee, donations. They're all greatly appreciated. And I look forward to seeing everyone again soon.